This is VOA News. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Tuesday said the UK is calling for net zero CO2 emissions as soon as possible as he attended the launch of a Glasgow UN climate change conference. The launch of the summit, known as COP26, took place in London's Science Museum. Climate activist and broadcaster David Attenborough.
And it is now up to us to put before the nations of the world what has to be done. We don't need to emphasize to them or to you that the longer we leave it of not doing things but going on talking about the problems, the worse it's going to get.
Johnson is seeking to use the announcement to elevate the United Kingdom's environmental credentials after he sacked the head of COP26, Claire O'Neill. Now, the Prime Minister declined to answer any questions on O'Neill, but last week the government said the role would be filled by a minister. The Moscow City Court has upheld a decision to keep former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan in pretrial detention until March the 29th, pending trial on charges of espionage. The court announced the ruling on Tuesday, upholding the extension that was first handed down in December. The 49-year-old Whelan, who holds U.S., British, Canadian, and Irish passports, was arrested in a hotel room in Moscow in December of 2018 and accused of receiving classified information. He was charged with espionage, which carries a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. His family said he was in Moscow at the time for a wedding. More than 420 people have died and more than 20,000 infected by the new coronavirus that has world leaders and medical professionals on edge. And the United States steps up its precautionary measures by restricting passenger flights that include people who have recently traveled from China. With more, Mariama Diallo for VOA.
At a joint news conference Monday with Uzbekistan's foreign minister in Tashkent, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the U.S. plans to have more flights heading to China to bring Americans back home from this Hubei province.
We anticipate that they will happen in the next handful of days, and we'll return those American citizens. We may well end up bringing some citizens back from other countries as well.
On Monday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry criticized the U.S. and other countries for some of the steps being taken in response to the outbreak. Now, more than 30 countries are restricting travel from China. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
One person was sentenced to death and two more people were sentenced to lengthy prison terms for spying for the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. A spokesman for Iran's judiciary said on Tuesday that Iran's Supreme Court has confirmed the death sentence for Amir Rahimpour for spying and attempting to pass information about Iran's nuclear program to the United States. I'm Joe Palca, VOA News.
Africa News Tonight on the Voice of America.
Good evening and welcome. Welcome to Africa News Tonight from the English to Africa service of the Voice of America, your source for Pan-African news and world developments. I'm Yehi Suhaib in Washington. Coming up on Africa News Tonight.
He was quick to read the changing times. He was quick to see that the wind was so strong it could not stop him.
That's political commentator Herman Manyora on the legacy of former Kenyan President Daniel Arap Moi, who has died at age 95. Details coming up. Also, we have some Kenyans recalling Moi as a force for stability, and others remember him as a tyrant. We'll have these stories and more ahead on Africa News Tonight. Our top story, former Kenyan President Daniel Arap Moi has died at the age of 95. Moi led Kenya for 24 years, the nation's longest-serving president, crushing dissent and arresting opponents. But he's also credited with a peaceful leadership transition after his party was voted out of power in 2002. Muhammad Yusuf reports from Nairobi.
Oduro Ngwen was a student leader at the University of Nairobi in the 1980s and often clashed with the government of the late President Daniel Arap Moi.
Again, in 1986, I was arrested. Again, on charge of sedition, I was jailed for 4 years, which I had to serve at community maximum prison. So those are the kind of prices I and many of our colleagues, which were progressive student leaders, had to pay for standing out to say that Kenyans deserve better.
When Ongwen and his fellow students protested against Moi government, agents removed educational materials from the school.
The university was never the same because the libraries had been raided, the bookshops had been raided. Any material that they considered unpalatable, using what they call state security, was removed from the libraries.
As Vice President, Moi came to power in 1978 after the death of Kenya's first president since independence from Britain, Jomo Kenyatta. Kenya became a de facto one-party state under the Kenya African National Union Party. Moi ruled from 1978 to 2002, Kenya's longest-serving president. Lydia Wambui lived the Kenya's capital at the time. Wambui said, what I remember about him is that there were a lot of thuggeries, there were no roads and no development. There were a lot of street children and the city was very dirty. In other words, infrastructure was very bad. But on the positive, life was not that bad, she says. Moi's foes saw him as a dictator who enriched allies and cracked down on opponents. But Moi's supporters like Jane Coleman saw him as a strong leader who connected more directly with the people. She says Moi used to give school-going children milk, and he also helped build a lot of schools across the country. In 1990, President Moi gave in to internal and international pressure to allow multi-party elections, which he won in 1992 and 1997. Moi was constitutionally barred from running again in 2002, and his party's candidate Uhuru Kenyatta, the son of the first president, lost to Mwai Kibaki. Though Kenyatta would later be elected in 2013 and 2017, Moi quietly retired from politics. Kenya's political commentator Harma Monyora says Moi heeded to the pressure and allowed change to happen.
He was quick to read the changing times. He was quick to see that the wind was so strong he could not stop it. So he quickly allowed in change, and as the saying says, don't stop change. Bring it on and then manage it. I think he did that very, very, very effectively.
Overall, former President Moi leaves behind a mixed legacy as Kenya is still struggling to free itself from the corruption and abuses rooted in its era. But Moi can also be credited with bringing multi-party democracy to Kenya and creating the modern presidency. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Nairobi.
Some Kenyans recall Moi as a force for stability, and others remember him as a tyrant. Rael Ombor reports from Nairobi.
Kenya's second and longest-serving president, Daniel Arap Moi, died Tuesday morning. Kenya's presidency and his family confirmed. No cause of death was given, but reports say Moi had experienced breathing problems in recent months. Gideon Moi, the former president's son, spoke at a news conference at the Nairobi hospital where Moi passed away while undergoing treatment.
I'd like to take this opportunity to tell my fellow Kenyans that they passed on this morning at 5:20. He passed away peacefully. I was by his side, and the family have accepted. And mine is just to give my heartfelt gratitude to all Kenyans and non-Kenyans for the prayers and thoughts that have been given to Jay and to our family.